Welcome back to 101 East. You're watching pictures of the recent protests against Malaysia's Internal Security Act. It's estimated at least 10,000 people rallied against what they say is an unjust law. Police arrested around 600 people. Now, Dennison, I want to ask you this question. The protests that we saw on the 1st of August, how much do the views of those protesters, how much are they shared by the rest of Malaysia? Or was it a protest by the opposition parties against the government of the day?
I think by reviewing the sheer numbers, because in case others have indicated it's over 20,000, but I would go by other independent reports like the Suhakam report, the Police Commission report, and other such studies that have called. So there is a public opinion that the excesses of the ISA has to be addressed, noting that the executive in areas of threat to security and other areas should be empowered in a limited way to act. And I think both the Police Commission and Suhakam is along lines with other countries where there are anti-terrorist legislation. I think it's in the usage and in the excessive powers that there has been great concern.
Kari, you mentioned this as well. You said that there was excessive powers. You admitted too earlier on that there has been a perceived abuse of the law as well. What would you do to change the law in order that it wouldn't be open to abuse?
Well, firstly, about the protest, I thought that was extremely unhelpful to the situation, because essentially the protests were, one, politically driven. Past leaders had instructed their members that it was compulsory for their attendance. So therein you see there was a political dimension to calling for the repeal of the ISA. It's unhelpful because it just calls for the abolishment or the repealing of the ISA.
So you don't think that a majority of Malaysians actually support abolishing the ISA?
I think what the government has done and what the Prime Minister has announced is spot on, that we need to review the ISA in light of present circumstances. And I'd like to bring the topic of discussion back to the review itself. What requires, what needs to be done in terms of the review. I think firstly we need to look at the legislation and ensure that there are still enough powers to look after national security. I think for the ISA or any amended law out of the ISA, national security is paramount. But within that there must be enough safeguards to ensure that there's no abuse by the executive. That means that whatever amendments that took place in 1989, which prevents Section 8, which is the minister's detention order, from being reviewed by a judge, perhaps there needs to be some amendment or re-examination at that itself. The right to counsel, the fact that they're kept incommunicado, all these things must be reviewed, must be addressed. And I'm agreeable to that as somebody who speaks from the position of being a government MP, an MP from UMNO, and the UMNO youth leader. I'm agreeable to that, and I'm also agreeable to the fact that we should also look at certain laws that have been enacted in other countries where it's restricted to certain things. Anti-terrorism, for instance, where if the concern is national intelligence information cannot be revealed in an open court, do it in camera. I don't see any reason why that can't be enacted or amended. So there are many things that we can do to ensure that the Act, the ISA, or whatever that replaces the ISA is still consistent with the paramount issue of national security.
Zaid, would you be happy with such changes as well?
My friend Kari always sounds very reasonable, and I wish he had more authority in government.
In due time.
Because Suhakam has made some excellent recommendation many years ago.
2003.
And we have been fighting for this. And they've just said, yes, we will review, that's the standard answer. But unlike Kari, I have heard bizarre statements from other ministers, including the Prime Minister. I mean, for example, he said the other day, well, why don't we build a stadium for you guys and you go and scream? You know, that statement reflects something very clearly. He doesn't understand what freedom is. Well, excuse me, if I may continue. He does not understand what personal liberty is. Because if you don't understand what the Constitution provides, you can never address. Because it starts from that recognition before you then go on to the question, how much do we curtail?
I disagree with Zaid's statement earlier. When the Prime Minister said that we should find a suitable venue for members of the public to express their grievances or to express their opinion and suggested rallies to be held in a stadium, I don't think that's a fundamental misunderstanding of personal liberties.
But it can be perceived
I think,
too that you are containing
to be very fair,
of speech
if you look at the march that took place, there was tremendous inconvenience to many people.
Can't you just give the permit? Can't you just say, can you march from point A to point B, like other civilized countries? Take 2 hours to do it? Can't you do that? No, we did not go there with tear gas. We did not go there with attack dogs. We went there with people, ordinary people, with children. And we were just expressing our right under the Constitution to assemble. Now, if you cannot understand that, the inconvenience caused by Barisan National authorities, by the police, it's not by us. Why can't you allow us that 2 hours of space?
And I don't understand why they can't do it in the stadium. I don't understand why they can't do it in the stadium.
Yes.
Why must they march and move?
Can we have Denison's comments here?
The problem with the issue of the stadium, as YB was raising, even simple things like candle vigil has been obstructed. A dinner reception or a dinner where speeches were prohibited. So the police have not, from the assessment in terms of the Human Rights Commission reports, have not followed some of the guidelines and suggestions. You can
but
use
it's not,
marshals.
I want to move away from the protests now.
Yes.
You mentioned that Suhakam, which is the Human Rights Watch of Malaysia, has made recommendation after recommendation after recommendation over the ISA, and still the UMNO-led government has not taken on these recommendations. Why is that so, Khairi? Can I just put that to you? Well, can we just get Khairi to answer the question?
I think the Prime Minister has given a commitment. His first
this
act,
Prime Minister
his first
has. What about
as,
the Prime Minister before?
No, let's
the Prime Minister before.
Let's stick to the present government.
An issue that
let's stick to the present government because we're talking about the present. We're talking about the present circumstances. The Prime Minister, when he came into power, Prime Minister Najib, his first pronouncement was to call for a review of the ISA. One of his first executive acts in power was to ask the Home Minister for the release of several detainees under the ISA. The Home Minister has said. The Home Minister has said.
Is that then an admission by the Prime Minister that the detainees under the ISA were wrongly detained? Is that an admission by the Prime Minister?
I don't.
This is why he released those detainees?
I don't think it's an admission that the detainees were wrongly detained.
Why then did he detain them?
I think.
Why did he then release them?
No, I think the release was a signal that the government, A, is looking at this legislation properly, but I'm sure that those who were released were those that, in the view of the police and the Home Minister, were those who do not any longer prove to be a threat to national security. And that's what it is. And coming back to the issue about why this Prime Minister believes that the review should take place now, and the Home Minister has said possibly that it will go in the next session of Parliament, is because we realize that at this point in time, the public wants to see some form of review of the ISA, and that's where we're all in agreement.
I hope so. I hope so, except that I just want to say this. He released 13 when he came to power. Mahathir released 12. And it did not prevent him from arresting another 100 in 87. From our perspective, until we see that it is not another cosmetic juggling of words and titles, for so long as you have a minister who can detain anyone without anybody questioning that decision, that is not acceptable.
On that note, I'm going to have to end this discussion. Thank you very much for joining us. I realize there are far, far more issues that we need to touch on, and it definitely, this is an issue that will continue to be debated. That's all the time we have for this discussion. My thanks to my guests, Khairi Jamaluddin, Dr. Denison Jayasuriya, and Zaid Ibrahim. But for now, from all of us at the 101 East team, it's goodbye.